Well, a certain Vladimir Putin will likely be feeling a bit more paranoid. It's one of those moments where the untouchable starts to look a little bit more, well, touchable. Indeed, Russian President Putin's luxury Aureus limousine exploded over the weekend in the heart of Moscow, sparking a certain amount of chaos and deepening, well, his insecurity, that's for sure. But how far does this go? Will it actually have any big difference? And, well, what does it mean for his fragile state of mind? Let's break it down.
This is The Global Gambit.
How are you going, everybody? This is a quick video here because several of you wanted my thoughts on this quite sudden bit of news where a, well, nice looking car, let's be fair, a shocking one, that what many people believe to be one of Putin's own limos catching fire after an explosion occurred. And it was an incident more than just simply a dramatic headline. It was a symbol of what many believe, particularly on the Ukrainian side, to be an unraveling security for Vladimir Putin and his growing paranoia. But before we deeper dive into exactly what has happened and my immediate reactions to this, my raw reactions, be sure to click that like button and subscribe. I mean, we all like to argue, and the algorithm is certainly one that we, well, shouldn't really argue with. So picture this then. We're in Moscow, we're around the Red Square maybe, near the headquarters of the Federal Security Services or FSB. And then suddenly, kaboom, there's a big explosion as a luxury vehicle, one of Putin's fleet, really, worth about £275,000, $370,000, known as an Aureus limousine, just went up in flames. Now, the limo is not Putin's personal ride. We need to make that very clear. It's managed by the Presidential Property Department, which handles all of Putin's transport needs. Indeed, it would be part of a fleet which undertake entourages, broader ceremonial excursions such as that. The question was obviously immediately, was Putin inside? I mean, that was quickly, I think, debunked that he was not. And when researching this video, the only main media sources I could find were more of a tabloid-natured one, say GB News, the Daily Mail, the Daily Star here in the UK, or some other similar styled ones, which more look for sensationalist type coverage, including in India. Now, it isn't necessarily a random attack. There are speculations over whether or not this was an intended explosion, as we've seen a couple of years ago with Alexander Dugin's daughter being exploded in a car bomb. But Russian leaders have indeed historically relied on highly secure, often, well, ostentatious vehicles like this one, with Putin regularly using them for travel both inside Russia and internationally. In fact, he's even given these limos as gifts to world leaders like Kim Jong-un, for example, both of these men who enjoy heavily armored vehicles and trains. Talk about a lavish trade deal indeed. But that's, well, half of it. The most concerning about this explosion isn't just the fire itself, it's what it represents. It represents, obviously, the growing vulnerabilities around Putin's inner circle, and by extension, the Kremlin's untouchable image. So what does it really mean for Putin's security situation? Well, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is timing. You can't ignore it. There's been increasing speculation about Putin's health for many years, especially after COVID, where he effectively self-quarantined for a couple of years in Sochi and didn't leave Russia for many a year. And some analysts, as we've had on the channel, like Mark Galliotti, have argued that there are different phases of Putin, which have developed over his 24 years of governance, in that he has become more paranoid and age just catching up with him. Reports have even suggested that he may not, well, he is 72. The timing also is incredible because Zelensky, president of Ukraine, hinted that Putin could be, quote, dead soon, and that his death would lead to the end of the war. I think it comes as no surprise that many Ukrainians like to see nothing more than the end of Putin. But for them to literally launch some kind of targeted explosion on the head of state would unquestionably result in nuclear retaliation. So it's not as simple as Ukraine just trying to take him out. They may take out similar high-targeted individuals around Putin to make him more insecure, like he has done in his own self-purges, for example, but it's not the same just to take out the head of state. And so Zelensky's remarks might, well, be extreme, but that explosion itself adds weight to the theory that the walls around Putin are effectively closing. For a man who's invested heavily in security measures, this incident is a glaring reminder of just how fragile that security still remains. We've seen reports of his paranoia reaching new heights in the past few weeks, sewer checks, bodyguards frisking people, and heightened fears of assassination attempts. Just last week, for example, Moscow even declared that any attempt on Putin's life would indeed be that nuclear response. So well, there's not exactly any space for subtlety here. Indeed, I don't really personally think that this was a targeted effort by the Ukrainian security services. If it was involving some kind of sabotage, then it was simply more meant as a symbol, as a gesture. And the Ukrainians have, despite what people claim, done a very effective job of breaking through security preventions of Russia, particularly through the sense of the drones that we saw targeting the Kremlin a couple of years ago, and just the broader increasing amounts of strikes deeper into Russia, and obviously Kursk, which up until a couple of weeks ago was still under Ukrainian control. So when your own then luxury limo blows up, you start to question the stability of your position. I certainly wouldn't like to be in Putin's. Workers, as video across the internet showed, rushed out to try and help from nearby bars. And it wasn't just a fire, though. There was public skeptical about this beginning to develop across other cars in the area. So if you can't trust the very vehicle that's supposed to transport you safely, what can and who can you trust? So it's not also the last point I would make about this one touchability. It's about Putin's overall ability to ensure that he comes across as a stable and protector of the Russian people, of the Russian state. He has that military that has been undermined and shown to not be the overarching power that we once thought. But that being said, the Russian military has proved to be resilient and is making progress on the battlefield, particularly in the east. So Putin needs to continue to portray a sense of a man in control, a man who is on top of both the military, diplomatic, and strategic elements of his governance, of his leadership. And if these sabotages, random explosions start to, increase in frequency, then it may well be something that undermines Putin's ability to command as much control as he has done, at least in the White House's perspective, for example. So where does this leave us? Well, Putin will be even more paranoid. The measurements of security will grow up, restrictions on public movement, and a more intense, high-stakes political set of maneuvers as well. The centralization of control, as we've been seeing in Russia, will only intensify rapidly in the next few weeks, all with the idea that Putin is sort of seeking to try and force the hand of Ukraine to the table, to agree to his maximalist terms, which the Ukrainians are not going to. And so we're going to see this go back and forth. The diplomatic movements will continue. We might see some progress on maritime aspects, but in terms of an overall ceasefire, that's not going to happen. And all the while, this is going to result in Putin's unprecedented inability to sense that he has control or security. And the cracks may his own desire to draw out the conflict, to draw out the negotiations may well be his biggest undoing, because he becomes so paranoid by these internal strikes that they force him to rethink otherwise. But that's more of a bit of a speculative nail biter to end on. I'm curious what you guys think. Is Putin's grip on power actually slipping for once a little bit more, or is this just another speed bump for the Russian leader? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Very simply, as much as this is a spectacle to see, I don't believe it's going to make much of a difference. I had many of you asking me to react to this, so this is my pretty raw reactions. I don't see this going much further than this, unless Zelensky continues to make provocations in terms of statements and action, which then are reacted to by the Kremlin in this way and these events happening. But I think that would be an extremely risky move for the Ukrainians to do as well, given they are frantically trying to keep the Americans on side and also hold out whilst the Europeans try to militarize and support them as well. There's a lot of different components moving here, and if one side gets too overzealous, either by Putin's holding out and waiting, or Ukraine trying to do these sabotage moves, might not be the best, smartest thing to do. But we'll see. And as always, guys, good. Either got to get playing or be played. I certainly don't want to imagine how Putin's feeling about those circumstances right now. Take care, everyone.